Hey guys, welcome to another Coach Adams Bikini TV. Today we are reviewing the pro show that happened overseas at FENGSHAN Kaohsiung in southern Taiwan. We're going to jump right into it and start off with 5th place, Elisabetta De Menteri. Now, I want to go over these overseas shows and also cover what's going to be happening this weekend because there's going to be a lot happening with pro shows. We have 32 pro shows left. We have a lot to get to before the Olympia qualification season is over. So let's go ahead and jump into this show. I want to give those overseas people some light because these people are going to be competing at the Olympia. We need to know who they are, how competitive they are at the Olympia level, and who's coming. So let's go ahead and jump right into it with Elisabetta De Menteri. So jumping right into 5th place, I wanted to go into this overseas and give the overseas people a little bit of advice as well, because sometimes overseas what I'm seeing is a huge discrepancy between how we're posing and how they're posing, the stylings over there, just the little nuances that are, much more advanced over in the US market versus the overseas market, just due to the total show volume. So I'm hoping that we can go over this, give some tips out, and bring everyone's level to equal playing fields. That way, from some people who come from overseas are going to have a better opportunity when they get to the US versus learning at the US at these big shows, actually being already learned when they get here and just jumping right in and being, apples to apples versus apples to, oh, she's good, but she has European posing. Oh, she's good, but she has Asian posing, right? So I want it to be, hey, she's good, and there's no difference in posing. Let's compare them apples to apples so there's not these significant difference. And you're going to see some of it. I'm not sure how much I'll see of it over here in Taiwan. It might be just on the same level. You never know with the internet. These days and YouTube these days, everything's getting smaller. There's a lot shorter learning curve than there used to be. So looking right at Elisabetta, looking at her overall conditioning, her overall shape, really, really good shape. I'm loving what I'm seeing. A couple little things she can work on with her posing. First off, in her presentation, I think the hair is a little bit long. That's a me thing. I do like to see the lower back. As we talk about, having just a little bit of that lower back showing really helps with showing the 3D of the glutes. When the hair is adding an extra couple inches to that lower back, the glutes aren't as projected forward as I've talked about before. So I want to see just a couple inches of skin on that lower back, just a tiny bit on that lower back, because it's going to make the glutes look like they're farther away from the lower back, which is going to make it look more 3D and make the glutes look bigger. Anything that's closer to you with less of a backdrop is going to look bigger naturally, So if I have my hand here, right, towards the camera, and my other hand is here, then this hand's going to look a lot bigger. But if my hand is here and my other hand is here, this hand looks about the same size. So it's just an illusion, but that hair creates a wall where it doesn't look as projected. And the glutes, instead of projecting this far out from the lower back, with the hair, they project this far out. So it just visually changes things just a little bit, and all these little things matter. Hopefully that translated on video. I'm not sure if it would, but I think that getting that hair just a tiny bit is going to help with the glutes look more 3D. Now, there are times when you don't want to do that. If someone has a really wide waist, I could see the argument for keeping it all the way down and blocking that wide waist and making sure that the hair just tapers right at the edges of the waistline so it doesn't look like the waist is as wide as it is. So there's an option there. That could be the case, but it's not the case for her. She's got an incredible waistline, really good on pretty much on all fronts. Now, the only reason that I think she's getting such a lower placing, which is still a really good placing, top 5, is I do want to see more tie-ins on her. Her having more tie-ins would be a really, really good physique. But when you look at her ratios, her shoulder to waist to hip ratio, everything looks really, really good. Now, when I look at her overall physique, I do think to balance out her physique from upper to lower body, she could have just a little bit more in the legs, just a little bit more size in the legs, which is going to help her balance from upper to lower body. And also, I think she can have more of that size in her hamstrings, just more roundness to her hamstrings here to really help with that balance. But the upper body, it's really there. It's where it needs to be. And honestly, her styling, her hair, her makeup, her tan, everything is really, really good. I don't think there's a lot to work on. I think in terms of her beauty flow, she gets a 10 out of 10 on her beauty flow when it comes to her hair, her makeup, her tan, her suit color. All of that's on point. So it's just for her a little bit more development, a tiny bit more conditioning on those glutes, cut the hair, and good to go. So let's go ahead and move on. So in 3rd place, we have Uyanga Bata. Hopefully I'm saying your name right, Uyanga. I've probably butchered that name, but congratulations on your 3rd place showing. Let's go ahead and take a look at her physique. Now, looking at her overall physique, she does push the limits on muscle here. One of the more muscular physiques that you would look at. Now, here's the thing. Sometimes overseas, they go overboard with the muscle. Judging this show was Maz, And I don't think he went overboard with the muscle at this show when you look at first place. When you look at third place compared to fifth place, I do think that third place arguably is pushing the muscle limits too much. But fifth place does need more muscle. So what do you go with? You give the girl who has less muscle the third place, or you give the girl who has third place fifth place, and you knock her down for muscle. Typically, you'll knock the girl that has more muscle down. That's kind of a common practice, but it just depends on how much more muscle she has and how much more muscle fifth place needs. In this scenario, I would probably go the same thing, go third to fifth. And that's honestly where I would go. So she's just a little bit over muscled. And fifth place is probably farther under muscled than she's over muscled. So that makes the right decision. I'm sure that was a tough call, and I'm sure that was up for debate on that too. Now, looking at her overall physique, really, really good physique, but she is pushing the limits here. When you look at how much shoulder capping she has, that's a lot of shoulder capping. You want to have some rounded shoulders. You want to have a little bit of capping to the shoulders these days in bikini. And even me, I'm more of a traditional bikini guy. I don't want to see the bikini get too crazy. But this would be considered a lot of muscle. These shoulders are getting pretty close to figure. I think that would be some of her feedback. She already has a really wide clavicle structure, so her clavicle width is already really wide. And then on top of that, she has really rounded shoulders. So something that she could do right away to help with her would just not pose so big. You know, she's posing really big, really wide, but she's already really big and really wide, wider and bigger than everyone at that show. So another thing you have to do when you're a bikini pro, and especially if you're a pro coach, you got to look at, okay, who's competing? Who am I going against? How much bigger am I? Am I smaller? Am I bigger? Do I need to pose a little bigger today? Do I need to push a little harder today? Who's likely to win this show? Who do I need to be competing against? If it comes to me and whoever in the top two, how do I need to pose? Do I need to pose, bigger, smaller, whatever? And it's stage IQ matters, because in bikini, it's not like bodybuilding. Bodybuilding, you can always go for the muscle. Bodybuilding, it's like, okay, always be as big as you can, always be as lean as you can. Doesn't matter who's next to you. You'd still got to be bigger and leaner, and it's just always the way it is, right? With bikini, though, you want to be maybe a little bit bigger, but you don't want to be way bigger. Maybe you'll be a little bit leaner, but you don't want to be way leaner, right? So it's always these like pushing and pulling and trying to find that middle ground. And it's kind of the person who's not the most extreme is going to win this show. And you're going to see that. And when we look at first place, she would be the most extreme out of everyone, but that's why she's not winning. She's too lean, right? On the hamstrings. Now, looking at her core could be tighter. It looks like she loaded carbs really hard. This looks to me like someone who's been carved up really well. She's very, very full. And that might have been an error considering how much muscle she has comparatively to everyone else. Someone that's this muscular, you might not need to fill out 100%. And then with that, you can get their waistline a little smaller by not having them 100% filled out. If you got the muscle and you look full anyway because you have so much muscle, what's the reason of loading so many carbs? My guess is, my eye tells me that she had a good hard carb reload, and that's why she's so full, and that's why her waistline looks a little bit bloated too. And I think that with her posing a little smaller, not as hard of a carb reload, would be a really good look for her. And honestly, maybe not posing so hard in the back pose, because here we're seeing a lot of adductor here. I'm sorry, adductor. So we're seeing so much of it that is causing that deep V. You're seeing this striated hamstring here that's showing the deep striation in those deep cuts in the hamstrings, those deep Vs that judges do not want to see. Even a judge who likes more muscle, Maz does like a little bit more muscle. I do think that he's done a really good job at the back half of this year, not going with such extreme muscle. And I think that even he will see this and be like, man, that's a deep V. That's more than I want to see. That's more adductor than I want to see. And you're just hurting yourself with that back pose. Now, when you look at her from the front, she's really not that conditioned where she should be showing this much detail. That really comes down to posing. So her whole thing is posing and filling out and not posing so big, right? So she could go from third to first, and she probably could have gone from third to first at this show if she would have prepared right. But in this scenario, she overfilled. She posed really big. Her presentation was a little bit off. She posed really hard in that back pose, showed striations and adductor deep Vs. When you look at her stylings too, her styling isn't modern styling. You don't see a lot of black suits anymore. Honestly, you rarely see black suits. I have this thing with black suits where I have a black suit curse personally. I've never been successful in a black suit. I once, when I was first coming up as like a coach, I had this thing where I was trying to keep a record of how many placings in a row I could have. And I got up to 70. I forget what it was. It was like over 10 years ago. It was like 71 in a row. People placed who didn't place. And it was like the 72nd person or 58th. I don't know. It was really high. It was like years of placing, right? For me as when I had a smaller team. And the girl who broke it had a black suit on that day. And I was like, I told her, I was like, I don't know about the black suit. And it was the first time I did in place in a long time. so black suits just tend not to have that contrast, that pop. The hairstyling too, you don't see anyone with hairstyling that's like that, with that slick back hair. Think of, a fitness model contest. Think of a kind of like a modern Miss America hairstyling with a bikini bodybuilding physique, of a fitness model physique. So the glam does matter. And I think that if you switched her to a different color suit with some pop and some color, with a different hair that didn't look so hard and slicked back, with all the other things I talked about, she moves right into first place pretty easily here. And because her structure is really, really good. I mean, look at that structure. Wide shoulder width, great V taper, good waistline, not great waistline, but good waistline. She'd be someone that maybe we would keep her hair a little longer because her glutes do pop out 3D either way. So that would be someone, for that example I gave a little earlier, maybe her hair you do keep longer, and then just don't pose so hard in the back, and she's moving up the ranks, no problem. I don't know if this is feedback she got from Maz. This is, pretty thorough feedback, but hopefully she uses this for the next show with her coach, brings more of that American styling at her next show, and moves up to the ranks, and we see her at the Olympia. Now, as always, we go into the battle for first. Did the judges get it right? Let's go through a head-to-head breakdown of Aryam Song versus Sarah Choi. So we look at our winner, Aryam Song here versus Sarah Choi. Let's go ahead and look at them in the initial breakdown of balance. Okay, so first off, when they come out to the stage, let's look at their overall balance. Okay, where does your eye go? I want you to train you guys a little bit today. Where does your eye instantly go? My eye goes right to her hip, and how hard she's sitting back into her hip, and how she's kind of leaning back in her pose on top of sitting into this hip. So that's where my eye goes. So overall in posing, they both do need work, and this is what happens in the overseas market. Not as many shows, not as much practice, not as much analysis on the videos, right? Hopefully they'll see this and make those adjustments. But a couple of things, you wouldn't see this in a top 2 in an American market, right? So, and let's go ahead and look at her posing. Now, this is a teacup arm. You won't have that kind of teacup arm in any American market anymore. That was a thing a couple years back, but that is no longer the styling of posing. So the styling of posing now is that arm is supposed to be directly at your side. That was a terrible line I just drew. All right, the arm's supposed to be directly at your side, just like here for Aryam. So when I look at posing, I have to look at those two things. Aryam is posing too hard in that hip, sitting too hard, leaning a little bit back, not helping her balance. You're seeing this glute really pop out. And you have Sarah here doing a teacup arm. So in terms of the overall posing, it's kind of a wash. They're kind of both posing not at their best, right? So, but if I had to edge someone out in terms of posing, I would probably edge out Sarah with her posing being less wrong. So now looking at the overall physiques, when I look at the conditioning, when it comes down to the overall conditioning, I do think that Aryam has better conditioning on that core. You could see just a little bit of softness to her core here. And I think that if she brought it in just a hair tighter, she probably would have won because her balance is significantly better than Aryam's. Aryam is a great physique, very impressive physique, but it is not a filled out physique in balance. So her legs are a little bit undersized comparatively to her glutes, and is just a little bit lacking balance in her overall physique. Very glute dominant, has a wow factor to her, absolutely. But when we look at the total package, she is just out of balance, and that's going to hurt her in the American market, and that's going to hurt her at the Olympia. That's something that she's going to need to work on to get ready for the Olympia. She's going to work on her posing. She's going to work on her overall leg size. She's going to need to work on bringing this glute, not showing so much of that glute where it's spun so much and pushing so hard where it throws off the balance of her physique. Go for less wow and more balance. It's going to help her out. But she does need more size to be competitive at the Olympia. Conditioning-wise, I think she's fine for the Olympia. I don't think that she needs to really change anything. It's just going to be the posing. But when I look at Sarah, she's going to need a little bit more actually overall conditioning and a little bit of development in her core. A little bit more in the abdominals because I'm not seeing much in this whole section. And when I look at this core, this is a third of the overall physique. That core is a large portion of your physique. When you break it down, it's about a third of the size of the physique. Because when we're really judging bikini, we're judging from basically the knees to the hips, the shoulders to the waist, and it's like a third of the breakdown of what you're actually judging. Obviously, the face, hair, makeup, tan, that's part of it. But once you get past that, and everyone's the same because everyone has good hair, good tan, good makeup, you kind of just go right to that portion of the body, and the core is 1/3 of it. It's a big portion of those points. So when I look at her, I look at, okay, I see the ribs here. That makes her look a little bit. Remember, when we see ribs, we look skinny. We don't look lean. When I see the obliques here, there's no definition on those obliques in terms of detail, which is fine. You don't need a lot of detail, but when you have no definition on the core as well, and your ribs are popping out, and you don't have that detail on the obliques, now your core is looking a little bit soft, even though it might not be soft. A little bit more ab training would go a long way for her, and I think with that and her posing, she could have edged out Ariam here for the overall win. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the back. Now from the back here, it's actually really, really close again. These scores could have been very, very close. From the front, it's hard because who do you go with? You go with someone who's a little bit less balanced but better conditioned, or do you go to someone who's more balanced and less conditioned? That core is a big factor in that. I would probably be leaning towards Ariam as myself, but after the show, I would give her a strong critique on working on her posing. Now, as being the head judge here, I will give credit to Maz here on his. I want to give credit to judges when they do a good job, and I also want to say, hey, when judges are doing a bad job or not hitting the numbers where they should in terms of the criteria, I'm also going to call that out too. But Maz had the option of going for more muscle with this show. He has gone with more muscle before. I think that he did a really good job at narrowing it down to a bikini physique. It looks a lot different than the UK girl that he picked, where it was a really muscular physique, very lean and diced physique. It was like the leanest, most muscular girl there. This is Bikini right here. Did a very good job. And I like that he did a good job with this because he had the option of going with the more impressive physique. So really, really smart move on the judging here. I thought it was perfect judging, considering all the options, because you had the beauty flow of Elizaveta. You had the overall power size of a third place. You have these two, which are fit the bikini criteria, one with a little bit less balance but more impressive in terms of conditioning, but the size of a typical bikini competitor that we'd go with. And I think he got it pretty spot on. I might have gone with second place for first place and traded those out. But it would have been very, very close. And there's a lot of pluses and minuses for both of those decisions. It could have been a lot of discussion here. And considering that I'm looking at pictures and I didn't see the overall presentation, that could have been the breaking factor too. How she was presenting herself on stage. How was she having fun on stage? Did she shine on stage more so? Was she stealing the light, right? That type of thing. And when it's this close, that could definitely be the breaking factor between the two. So I can't be a full-on fair judge here, but I'd be very close with these two. And even I'd have a hard time even now. I might go with second place for first here, but you have to take everything into account. Now, that being said, when you look at the back pose, the waistline on Ariam here is just way crazier, and she just kills it on that waistline. Now, remember, if her hair was long and blocky and it didn't show the back, I couldn't judge the waistline, right? So good for her for showing the lower back, for showing the edging of her side so you can see how small that waistline is. That is a huge help for her, and it also makes her glutes pop more. So she has those pop-out hips that pop with that waist to hip ratio, where you have that wider hip ratio to waist ratio, and she really sells it with how much arched she is. Her back looks even farther away, which makes her waistline look even smaller. So if her hair wasn't where it's at, it wouldn't give me the option of seeing that, being impressed with that. So when it comes to the shoulder to waist to hip ratio, she does win from the back here. When it comes to the overall fullness of the glutes, I would say it's pretty close. I would actually edge it out for Sarah here. Now, looking at the shoulder width, they both have really good shoulder width. They both have as much muscle as they need. I would edge out the V-taper, just the overall lat development and V-taper to Sarah, but I think that Ariam can just open her back a tiny bit, show a little bit more width when she gets to the Olympia to be more competitive in the American market with the more muscular girls. She's going to run into a real muscle roadblock when it comes to the American market at the Olympia. That's where she's going to get hurt. She needs to have more overall muscle to be competitive. And even with her, I say don't get your adductors developed. With her, I would actually probably develop her adductor just a little bit. Look at how straight up and down her leg is. She could use a little bit of adductor, specifically on the right side. There seems to be a little bit of a muscle imbalance from the right to the left. You can see the left side adductor does look more detailed, more prominent, more muscular than the right side adductor. A good judge will also see that, so she's going to need to balance that out as well. So at the high levels, you're going to see these things. It's going to be more obvious to a judge or to a high-level coach, but that is something that can help her with her overall width. Also, a little bit more in the hamstring, a little bit more roundness to her hamstring, a little bit more in the glute, and she's going to be good to go. Now, as far as Sarah goes, from the back, she's actually doing a really good job. She's got that full tie-in without being an edge tie-in, good roundness to the hamstring. You're seeing the quad line looks really good. When you look at the legs, I'm actually going to edge it out and give it to Sarah here on the legs and on the lower body by just a hair. So I could see this one being a tough one. I do think the judges got it right. I would like to see the whole posing video to be sure of that. But of course, a real throwdown. And speaking of throwdowns, this weekend we have some real throwdowns going on. We have a show in Vegas. We have a show in Texas. The Texas show is crazy deep. The Vegas show has really high talent level. Ashley's coming back on stage. Maya's going to be there. Ariel's jumping back on stage in Vegas. We have some heavy hitters in Texas. We have Jordan trying to get another win, being an Olympia blocker in Texas. She just won recently. We have Lexus out there as well, trying to get her Olympia qualification. We have India Paulina making her debut of 2023. Is that going to be an easy ride for her? Is she going to be bringing a great package for her? Is Jordan going to edge her out? Is Elizabeth going to be sliding up and actually taking out and bumping past Lexus and Jordan, who beat her the last time? Is she better and fuller now? She is a little bit. Is it enough? So we will see. We're going to have an exciting one for you guys next week. Hopefully you guys picked up a thing or two. Thank you guys so much. Did I get it wrong? Leave it in the comments of what you think. Of course, worldwide online contest prep programming, even in Taiwan, available at teamelitephysique.com, training with me. I'll talk to you guys next time.